Thank you for joining me on this last segment of the show. And heading into the last segment of the show, the last topic I wanted to bring up is the questions, potentially more questions after the franchise tag deadline. That deadline was on Tuesday, and we saw a lot of players get franchise tagged. Josh Allen, Brian Burns, Antoine Winfield, Justin Madubuike, all these players that these teams couldn't really afford to get out the door, even get a sniff of free agency or other teams that might pull them away. So they were tagged, and these teams now have more time with them to negotiate a long-term deal. And for the most part, the majority of those deals seem to be trending in the right direction. One of those deals actually got finalized before I started this show today. Jalen Johnson was one of those players that was signed to a franchise tag and then worked out a long-term deal. I think it was 4 years, $76 million. I know it was 4 years. I just can't remember off the top of my head if it was 76 or 86 million per year. But he got a big deal. The Bears made it a priority to not let him get away, and now he's locked in for at least 4 more years, potentially 2 more years on a clause that I saw in his contract. But regardless of that, we get to the period after the franchise tag deadline, and there's still questions that I certainly have about some of these things that happened. One of the biggest ones is around the New York Giants. I have to start with this one because the franchise tag is put in there to make sure your best players aren't getting away. As simple as that, in layman's terms, to just keep your best players at least longer for you to negotiate a long-term deal. And the Giants didn't do that at all without them tagging Saquon Barkley or Xavier McKinney. Arguably, their most reliable player, in my opinion, was Xavier McKinney because of his durability. He was the best player certainly on that defense, and the value that they got for him in the second round, picking him in 2020, he made 46 starts in 49 appearances for the Giants. Just this last season, he had 116 tackles, 11 pass defenses, and 3 interceptions. And the biggest thing for me, he was on the field for every defensive snap for the Giants in 2013. And it was already reported that the Giants weren't going to tag Saquon. They still had hopes that they could get a long-term deal done, but that obviously didn't happen. He's rumored heavily to go to the Houston Texans. And what other player did they have to tag that was as significant as Xavier McKinney? There wasn't one. And based off of all those stats I just laid out there, how consistent he's been growing into that leader of that defense, a capstone or a pillar, I should say, for that defense. I just don't understand how they couldn't tag him. And now he gets added to a very impressive safety market in free agency with Antoine Winfield now being off of it. You could argue that Xavier McKinney is at least the second best safety available other than Justin Simmons now. Justin Simmons is more likely to come at a higher price, so Xavier McKinney might be the more appealing one to a lot of teams, and for the Giants to just not apply the tag to him, yeah, they could say they're confident in applying or working out a long-term deal in free agency. Realistically, if you're Xavier McKinney and you really lay out your options, and it's more likely that another team that's in a better situation than the Giants comes knocking at his door. If they're offering the same amount of money or more than the Giants, I don't think it'd be a hard decision for Xavier McKinney to move on for his career because of the questions that the Giants have around the quarterback. They don't really have a receiver. Their old line isn't really that great. They're going to lose Saquon Barkley, and defensively, they don't really have any stars. They have Kayvon Thibodeau, who's a good player. I really like him, but he's still not established enough to carry all the weight of that organization. And if things go wrong, are Brian Dable and Joe Shane going to be there? It doesn't seem like the Giants were really thinking, I don't know, I guess long-term that much. And if they sign him after to a long-term deal, that's great for them, but I just don't see it as a big possibility for them to do it. If I was Xavier McKinney and I was thinking about myself personally, career-wise, that's kind of where my head would be at. And we'll see how it plays out, but that was the biggest question that I couldn't really wrap my head around. And moving on to that, talking about the franchise tag, another question I just had was what was going on with all the franchise tag placements and then trades. I think that's a bigger topic that I've seen pop up a lot more this year than I've seen in the past. Usually when players get the franchise tag, it's they'll play it one more year and then another team will get their hands on them. But I think this year I've seen a lot of players be just placed on that franchise tag with the intention of trading them later, and almost teams accepting the fact that they're not going to get something done, even with more money integrated into the whole league this year with the $255 million as the cap number. To see all these sign and trade deals, it's kind of mind-boggling. Just as examples, L'Jarius Sneed, T. Higgins, and Brian Burns. Now, they're not guarantees to be traded. They all got franchise tagged, but there's a lot of reliable sources out there that believe that the Chiefs are on the verge of signing Chris Jones, and all the money that they're going to have for Chris Jones, there's not going to be enough for L'Jarius Sneed. They told him that they'll franchise tag him if it comes down to it, but if they can't work out a long deal, they worked out with him that they'll be looking for trade options, to still benefit him and make sure he can get his money elsewhere if it comes down to it. And with T. Higgins as well, there was a lot of reports that said the reason the Bengals tagged him so early is because they're trying to work out not only a long-term deal, but if they can find trade partners out there, and almost accepting the fact that they can't keep him on their team past next season. And rather than losing him for nothing, they're going to have extra time to look for trade partners and get something back in return for him, because he believes he can be a number one receiver elsewhere. He believes he can get that type of money elsewhere. And more importantly, there are other teams that I'm very sure are willing to give him that type of money, like the Titans, the Cardinals. Just those two off the top of my head jump out as potential suitors for T. Higgins that could give him a lot of money to build their offenses, and for Brian Burns as well. He was tagged, but what's different about him, he's been, I think, a little bit more vocal about being disgruntled with the situation in Carolina. I don't think anybody needs reminding of the situation in Carolina. They get a new head coach. They're still trying to figure out Bryce Young and how he'll work. Offensively, they don't have that many weapons. Adam Thielen was there, but he kind of fizzled out towards the end of the year. And defensively, Brian Burns is probably their best player. And, just thinking about personal-wise, his career-wise, looking out for himself, like a lot of players should and probably have to do, he just might not be happy there, and he might not want to extend further with the Panthers, and he won't sign the franchise tag. And rather than losing him for nothing, like these other guys as well, the Panthers might have to accept the fact that they're going to have to trade him, because he is reported to be not entitled, but he'll be looking for up to or more than $27 million potentially. And I don't think the Panthers are in a spot right now to pay and allocate that much money to one position, Brian Burns, where they have so many other issues to worry about. And I think I've just seen it pop up a lot more. And, I'm wondering why that is. I kind of gave some reasons as to why that is, but I thought it was interesting and pretty fascinating to see how their teams are going to work it out, because I expect all these players probably to get traded. But, I haven't really seen it too often before. And these players are very significant and are going to be great pieces on other teams. And I'm excited to see where they end up. But it is something different I noticed. And just on the other topic of another question I had, which running back or how long is it going to take for a running back to get signed? None of them were obviously franchise tagged. The Giants with Saquon, the Raiders with Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard and the Cowboys, Derrick Henry and the Titans. All these guys were let go essentially. And with an already down running back market, it doesn't look like they're going to get a lot of money. But just on that topic, which one is going to get signed, or how long would it be? Are some of these running backs going to be a bit stubborn and try to negotiate more and extend the period before someone signs a running back? How many of them are going to get signed before the draft? Because it just seems like all these teams are resupplying through the draft, and rather than sign one of these guys for up to $9 million, they'll just get another running back and take their chances with him. Is that the smart thing to do? I don't think so. With the guys like Saquon, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, and even DeAndre Swift out there. But, that's where the league is going. They're allocating more money elsewhere, specifically to the quarterbacks, obviously, wide receivers, pass rushers are getting all the money, cornerbacks are getting all the money, and unfortunately for running backs, they're not. And it's going to be fascinating to see how they negotiate these deals. It was reported that Tony Pollard was willing to take less money to go back to the Cowboys. And is that smart for him? He plays a very physical position. Is it smart for him to take less money for all that he does and all the pain and physicality he goes through? If you look at a guy like Saquon, he looks more likely to be paid the most out of this class, but it looks like he's going to go to the Texans. And how long is it before they make a move, or the Eagles make the move, or the Cowboys? He's been rumored to a lot. Who's going to pull the plug first, and who's going to take the risk on one of these guys who I think will instantly be a great addition to any team? I think DeAndre Swift as well. He's not really mentioned as much, but he had a good season with the Eagles, and he debunked a lot of these ideas that he wasn't really durable. He's had a lot of injury history with the Lions. Now, this season has been his most healthy season, and I think he's built a good resume, a good thing to put out there to other teams to say, hey, you saw last year, I put up great numbers. And frankly, I don't think the Eagles used him as much as they should have. And I think another team could definitely benefit from the skill talent that he has, not just running the ball, catching the ball. He's very dynamic when he gets the ball in his hands. And I think last year helped him a lot to get over those injury doubts. And he could be a great addition on another team as well, when and if they decide to sign him. When that would be, if I were to take a guess, I don't think any of these deals will be signed definitely not before the league year starts, and maybe not before late March, early April, I believe, just because, again, I think there's a lot of doubts around running backs, and I don't think teams right now are willing to jump on one of these guys right away to improve their team because they have other things to look for, and the market right now doesn't seem to support it. With the draft also having a lot of talent, I think this is a very deep draft, really all across the board, one of the deepest drafts I've seen in terms of talent at each position. The O-line, there's a great abundance of talents everywhere along the offensive line. Quarterback, I don't have to bring up. Wide receivers are really showing out as well. The defensive backs, I can name all the positions, and it seems like all of them are very deep, which is why all these teams are kind of teetering right now. Is it worth putting all that money into a running back when I might have a Justin Jefferson or a Kirk Cousins to pay in free agency? A lot of teams are weighing their options right now, and I think they're going to do a lot of overthinking, and it might be a while before we see one of these running backs signed. Among one of the many questions that are still available after the franchise tag deadline, when will we get the answers? We're going to have to wait and see. But that's all the time I'm going to have for this episode. I want to thank all you guys again for listening or watching this episode, even if you tuned in during the show or afterwards if you rewatch it. Please remember to follow and like the show. Like and follow the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Make sure to also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok for more of this network's content. If you like this show and like more of this content and you want to see more of me, please check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the Podcast Network channel on YouTube for more of these live shows that I've recorded, as well as YouTube shorts that I put out, and the individual segments in individual videos if you happen to miss one, or want to just tune in for one of the segments provided on the live shows. Tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to more NFL and football conversations. As always, I've been your host, Manny Maradiegue. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.